So when I look back in my life and I look at how I was raised and where I am today, I have all this knowledge about what we call holistic medicine. But as Dr. Singleton said, I did travel quite a lot to China. And thanks to President Nixon, in 1970, when he visited China, he came back to America and he educated people about acupuncture. People say, you put needles in a person and the pain goes away, maybe placebo effect, maybe it doesn't work. So with me studying Chinese medicine, I found out how acupuncture can alleviate a lot of pain naturally, not with a prescription, no. You have a headache, we go to the doctor, he gives us Advil or Tylenol in Toronto, or maybe in South Carolina, wherever you practice. But did you ever ask yourself, why do I have a headache? It can be very simple, dehydration, not enough water. But as a naturopathic doctor, we are trained just like Dr. Singleton, 4 years pre-med, 4 years in the medical school. You rule out the simple things. Maybe you didn't eat well. Maybe you drank too much. To the point of also, maybe it could be a tumor in your brain causing a headache. So you really have to go to see a doctor. And I believe what Mr. Turner had said, people are reading all on the internet and diagnosing themselves. This is very dangerous because you could miss something. You may have a headache from a lack of drinking water, or you could have had a tumor. So it's very important to understand you need to be assessed. With a proper diagnosis and finding out the causes of your problem, that can mitigate a lot of unwanted and unneeded pharmaceutical drugs. Before I get into the agenda that I want to talk today about, the agenda that I have here is I want to talk a little bit about the market landscape. I also want to talk about who is using these natural products and why. And then I want to talk to you about these regulations in Canada and now in the United States. Are they regulated? Are they safe? Then I'll tell you about the latest trend. You've probably heard about probiotics. When I was in pre-med, never heard about probiotics. Then I'd like to talk a little bit about the importance and the safety of taking natural supplements. Not all natural supplements are safe if not taken in the right dosages. And if you're taking pharmaceutical drugs with natural products, you better let your physician know. For me, I believe in preventive medicine. I'm from Trinidad. My great-great-grandparents came as indentured laborers from India or somewhere north or South India, I don't know. But when they came, they lived off the land. We didn't have pharmaceuticals as we have today. Pharmaceuticals are great, especially in emergency medicine. Doctors are excellent in surgery, in prostate cancer. They're excellent. But I come about telling people, before you get to that stage, you can do a lot of things. Obesity, type 2 diabetes, chronic pain, fatigue, insomnia can all be helped naturally with vitamins, minerals, and herbal remedies. After 45 years of seeing people and educating people, I have shown and I have proof that people got better taking natural supplements. Who would have thought when I was in university that a doctor like Dr. Singleton would have an open mind? I've been to his office. One of the doctors in the back from Shield, when I spoke to him as a surgeon, what a compliment to his practice. You have surgeons coming talking about cardiovascular wellness, educating people. You need doctors. But where I come from, I will talk to you about what fast food does to oneself. The excess oils and fries and chips and burgers and excess oils that we consume and the foods that are destroyed. I was never exposed to candy till I came to Canada when I was 12 years old. We ate apple, plums, peaches, guava, cauliflower, Brussels sprouts, romaine lettuce, kale, collard, Swiss chard, We ate a lot of yogurt. You think about pumpkin. When I came to Canada, I learned something called Halloween. I was exposed to candies for the first time. And I swear, within 1 year, I had 8 cavities. You are not only what you think, but what you eat, what you put in. You put good things in, you have good output. So for me, talking about the agenda, I will make sure that I will let you know that in the agenda, I would like to clarify some terms before I get into supplement. So the next slide you will see, you hear this buzzword called nutraceutical. Nutraceuticals are things that are derived from foods. When you look at a pill that you get, we extract something from the pill, from the food, and put it into a pill. So is it all natural? Not really, because we have taken something from the earth that God created and put on the earth, and we have processed it and put it into a capsule, a caplet, a tablet. So a nutraceutical, for very simple, is like cooked tomatoes. Tomatoes has an active ingredient called lycopene. This is what brings, for me, the confidence of why products work. There are certain things that we extract from meats and from foods and plants called vitamin D, or we can make our own vitamin D with good sun exposure. But nutraceuticals that you will find out now, the dietary supplements are vitamin D and A and B complex, but the nutraceuticals actually comes from food. Together, people can take it to help rectify. One key important message for you to understand before you leave is I will tell you something about what I learned even before I graduated from university. Who is Elvis? Who is Dr. Singleton? We are made up of certain things: fats, proteins, carbohydrates, vitamin, minerals, trace minerals, and water with enzymes. So when I was studying biology, I understood that what is biology? It's a study of life. And who I am? I'm made up of all these fats, protein, carbohydrates, and natural supplements. So when a patient came to my office and brought a child, maybe 5 or 10 years old with knee pain, unlike my medical doctors, I have over 24 medical doctors in my family: surgeons, gynecologists, psychiatrists, EENT specialists, cardiovascular surgeons. My 4 sisters went to school to become nurses. If they are approached and you have a headache or you have a pain, we have Tylenol. But in my medical practice, I would talk to the mother and ask, what did the child eat the day before? What activities? Soccer or ice hockey. Believe it or not, I still play ice hockey at 68. People are amazed that at my age I can play. So when I asked the mother why, believe it or not, as a child, maybe the child fell playing soccer and had pain. So for the ice, we learned the acronym RICE, R-I-C-E, rest, ice, compress, elevate. With no Advil, in less than 24 hours, the child inflammation, the knee problem went away with no drugs. We are to blame. We go to the doctor last minute and we wait and wait and wait and don't get proper diagnosis. And then we say, cure this pain, cure my arthritis, cure my weight loss. And doctors are bombarded in Ontario where we have 2 million people that don't have a medical doctor. They're waiting, we don't have enough physicians. I don't know about South Carolina or America, but to get an MRI, you'd have to wait almost 6 to 9 months on a waiting list. So what I'm here today, we all have to be proactive. Come to the Singleton Healing Center. We will do full assessments and tell you what you need to take to prevent certain illnesses. because I saw it in my medical practice with people taking natural approaches to reverse type 2 diabetes. I'll repeat that again. I, in my medical practice and other people, have shown people how to reverse type 2 diabetes, how to take care of their pain naturally. Barring is not a traumatic car accident. We have ways to heal people. On my next slide, if you look at the slide, the global, by 2030, for those of you who can't see, there will be $722 billion spent annually on nutraceuticals. And people ask, and you have known, I've taken this nutraceutical and it doesn't work. You cannot guess what you need. That's why you have to be assessed on what you need. You just can't be taking a certain nutraceutical because your medical doctor will say, and most of them will say this, you can take the nutraceutical with a vitamin. It may not harm you, but you're just peeing out. And you're just wasting your money. And in some cases, yes. And I will talk about certain slides and certain things about things, but on my next slide, you will see, who would have thought when I was a little boy growing up in Trinidad that we would be taking supplements? Multivitamins in the blue on the right side makes up a lot. And Dr. Singleton pointed out this, 77% of people take nutraceuticals. But did you know how many fruits and vegetables you need to take every day? People think about maybe 3 or 4. You need to take 28 different types of fruits and vegetables on a weekly basis because the body is made up of many different parts. For your eyes, you need certain things like vitamin A and retinol. For your bones, you need calcium and magnesium. So you can't just eat one staple, one food. You need to eat a variety. And most people in my medical practice do not eat more than 8 fruits and vegetables on a daily basis. They do not. So if you don't eat your foods, and I told you the basic principle of who you are, you're made up of vitamins, minerals, trace minerals, you need proteins, fat, and carbohydrate. You need a lot of things. As the president said, there are a lot of food trucks out there. And we eat certain things that are processed and full with dyes and chemicals. I will let you know that even I sometimes, and Kono is my witness, I have cravings for sugar and sweet, but the key thing is moderation. So if you and I had a Mars bar today, I would bring you along with me to run 2 hours to burn it off. People don't have time. So you have to think about it. Maybe I'll have a quarter of that Mars bar. Maybe I'll have it once as a treat. But you cannot deny people from having sweets. You can deny people. In fact, I showed how stress affects the body, the human body. One cigarette contains over 4,000 chemicals. One cigarette takes away 20 milligrams of vitamin C to almost 1,000. Depends on how much you smoke. So I never told my patients quit smoking. Why? Because they smoke because it relaxes them. But if you could show them what cigarette does, I had people take a cigarette in my practice. We went outside, they smoked a cigarette. And we learned from school, in the medical school, the pulse test. The pulse rate of an individual here may be about, for females, about 68, maybe for men, maybe if they're in good shape, maybe 54. But the average is about 50, maybe about 72 beats per minute. Guess what happened after they smoked a cigarette? My dear, you're correct. It went up. So wait a minute. You're taking something to smoke and relax you, but your pulse rate went up. So the key thing is you don't tell people don't do this. Stop doing that. You teach and you educate them. So in my practice, if they had to smoke, I was giving them a lot of vitamin C. Because when you smoke, it takes away vitamin C from the body. Even people know now, as medical doctors and pharmacists, when people are taking something called Lipitor, it depletes the body of coenzyme Q10, which in fact coenzyme Q10 is a cardiovascular wellness nutraceutical to help to give what we call in science, drive the Krebs cycle. It's a mitochondria in the cell that gives you energy, coenzyme Q10. How many people know about it who have cardiovascular problems? But they know Lipitor, they know antihypertensive drugs, but these are the things that I have learned from my own practice to educate people. Once in a while you can eat fast foods, but the body will suffer for it. Even I'm very proud now, when I was looking for a vitamin company and I was the spokesperson and I went to a pharmaceutical symposium, many doctors prescribe antibiotics. But doctors did not know and pharmacists did not know many years ago, if you take antibiotics, it doesn't differentiate the good bacteria and the bad. It wipes it all out. Then you go back next week, you gotta take more probiotics. Because probiotics is gonna help to get rid of the problem that you see that people have in the bad probiotics, the good the bad bacteria, the good bacteria, they're all replenished. You have to put back, it's called probiotics. In fact, people are taking more probiotics than you can think about. Starbucks around the corner now. People didn't know about it. And pharmacists now tell the patients, take your probiotics after about 1 or 2 hours after you take your antibiotics. I have gone publicly and have said this, my children have never taken probiotics. I have never taken a pharmaceutical drug in my life. Because I have the knowledge of what my grandmother told me what to eat and to exercise and what supplements. But some people do need to take supplements, add supplements to their pharmaceutical drug, but they have to know when to take it. This is the education part that we will do at the Singleton Healing Center. The next slide will show you people want to take products for general wellness. A medical doctor, when a pregnant female comes to her practice, she may have never taken any type of nutraceuticals or vitamins. But we have something called prenatal vitamins. Women who get pregnant know to take it because the doctors promote it, which is great. That is why it's number one. Women in general is the more part of my medical practice because I see a lot of women who have menopause. Menopause is not a disease in my practice. It's a transition of a woman's life. Unfortunately, I learned from my mom when I was a young boy in Trinidad. My mom had to leave the house. I didn't know that she went away till I got older. My mom went because she had irregular bleeding, and the doctors did something called a hysterectomy. So when I got into medicine, I wanted to do things to learn, to educate women. It's an imbalance of something called progesterone and estrogen. And you could do it naturally with natural herbs. That people are taking natural herbal remedies like black cohosh, change tree, wan tien, dong pui, soy, because it lifts the good phytoestrogens in a lady. Unlike estrogen from the pharmaceutical, it causes many things. And there was a Women Health Initiative study that took thousands of women and they did a placebo as one non-placebo, and they found, unfortunately, they had to halt the study because the side effects of the Women Health Initiative study they were taking caused breast cancer, caused cardiovascular complications. So my grandma didn't take pharmaceutical drugs. My mom had a hysterectomy. So I was able, when I got into the Naturopathic College and do research back in 1996, I showed how taking natural things can help. Did you know that women just taking weight-bearing things can help bone density? Did you know that you take vitamin D and vitamin K2 to help bone strong density? So why take a pharmaceutical drug if you can do it to prevent the complications for menopausal women? One last thing about women also, because I had 4 sisters, if a woman had irregular menstruation, they were put on the birth control pill. There are studies linking showing birth control pills is linked to breast cancer. We have about maybe 7,000 deaths in Canada from breast cancer because of the side effects of certain things that they're taking. So now, going to the men, I won't forget the men. How many men take pumpkin seeds? Oh, why do we take pumpkin seeds as men? Because we know the prostate glands, when we're deficient in zinc, can lead to something called BPH, benign prostate hypertrophy, enlargement of the prostate. Alcohol is not good, smoking is not good, fried foods is not good, yet so many men have prostate problems, but just taking something naturally like zinc can mitigate a lot of problems of enlarged prostate. So when I look back and I look and see women and all these things, I'm very happy to say the seniors, which I'm 68 almost, are taking supplements. We are the most avid users of supplements today. But as Dr. Singleton says, we have to grasp and educate. Is the children we have to start off with. The first symbol a child recognizes is not a vitamin bottle, it's that N. It's called McDonald's. They recognize that, and they're on it, a lot of the young kids. Mom is busy, dad is busy, easy to go through a drive-through, pick it up easily. But that's one of the things that we should not do it excessively. Maybe once a month, or you cannot deprive kids of what they want, because they'll go behind your back and do more. So it's important to understand that seniors now are taking supplements. On the next slide, efficacy. What's on that label? Is it in the bottle? Not true. Buyer beware. Very important to understand that when you look at nutraceuticals and things in the bottle that claims, that's why we have something called in Canada, I'll talk first, it's called NHPD, Natural Health Products Directory. If you have a product and you put the product on the market and it doesn't say what's on that inside the bottle on the label that's put there, the president of that company will be liable to spend 2 years in jail, and that company will be fined $10 million. That vitamin company will go bankrupt. So we came up with something called NHPD, Natural Health Products Directory, where every single ingredient from a reputable company must be tested for impurities, for toxins, for arsenic, or any things that could harm the public. In the United States, I heard about something called Deshay. And Deshay is a dietary supplement, health and education act. They don't even test the products. Literally overnight in 1994, they had millions of products they put into the market. Products were not even tested. And the Deshay, recently, the FDA came back in 2023 and they did what we call a crackdown. In 2023, the FDA went on illegal claims. How many of you have been told, come to this networking marketing company, we have a product that can cure ABC? It's not true. Always question, educate yourself. And this is where I come in to work at the Healing Center, that we can educate people what to look for. What's on the label may not be inside the bottle. that can actually harm you. Pharmaceutical things that may be added to it, especially, I'm sad to say that I'm a little bit overweight myself. And I look at people that we have 1 in 3 kids in Canada, maybe sometimes 1 in 2, that are now obese. Not overweight, obese. We have seen type 2 diabetes among children in Canada by 6 years old. Not 30, not 40, when we were sedentary, we're working, we're overweight. We're seeing kids below 10 years old with type 2 diabetes today. I don't know the statistics yet till I come more often to figure out, is it cardiovascular problem, is it cancer problem, is it diabetes problem, is it arthritic problems? But we know that in Canada, that a lot of people are buying these products with outrageous claims because they're weight loss products. There's something called amphetamines that are put in there that they're not telling people about it. So the rules and regulations, you have to really understand what products you're taking and why you're taking it and how much. So there's certain trends in my field. When I was younger, one of the biggest trends for weight loss was apple cider vinegar. And that became $100 million a year because women, especially after pregnancy, or men in later ages, they were looking for the magic bullet. But did anybody ever think about fiber? My grandmother cooked fiber, what we call it, Quaker zones. No, porridge, not good. But fiber is high in fiber. And the majority of people in North America, Canada, and United States take about less than maybe minuscule, about 2 to 3 grams. They need about 20 or more. What about watermelon? What about apples? What about papaya? What about Quaker oats? Do we eat that every day? No, high in fiber. And we have constipation. Fiber, water, movement can mitigate constipation. When we go to the doctor, we get a stool softener. But it's not the idea and the blame I put on the medical physicians. I blame us. We go to them and he's licensed to prescribe something as a laxative, or if we can't sleep, they give us a sleeping pill. But look at the causes, find the causes of the problem, and you can mitigate a lot of health problems. So, disease treatment, we really have to understand that there's no such thing as taking one pill to cure yourself. I am sort of like saddened to tell you that I have one of my sisters who work at an old age home, and she lines up morning, lunch, and supper. And there are people maybe halfway down this hallway lined up every morning in a nursing home for medication. That's what my sister does. The average amount of pills a senior citizens take in Mississauga, Ontario is 26 different medications a day. I'll repeat that if you didn't get that. The average amount of pharmaceutical drugs that a senior citizen takes in Mississauga is 26 pills. Some a little bit less, some a little bit more. And of those patients, how many vitamins do they take? Not very many. So they're living on, when people come to my practice, they come in with a lot of bags of pills, and we have to decipher the side effect of this one, and the side effect goes to that one, and they're caught in the system. So this is what we're hoping, that people come and educate themselves in a clinic like the Healing Center, at Singleton Healing Center, so we can educate them and we can wean off. And I use the term, we can wean off. You cannot stop your medication. I had my first success with somebody with hypertension. He was on 6 medication. It took us about 8 months, but we were able to wean him off with the help of the medical doctor, and we weaned off this patient to 1 pill a day. And I felt so happy because he was more energetic and he picked up squash and he changed his diet. It doesn't happen overnight. It's a healing process. So when I look at the promise on the next slide, you'll see We have certain things that when we promise what's in the pill, we also have to make sure that it's tested. You have to test products. You have to test it. Do you think when you go and buy a car, the industry makes a car? No. They have the test drive to make sure the brakes are working. Just like in the nutraceutical company, we have USP, United States Pharmacopoeia. We have something called the NSF, the National Sanitation Foundation. All that's implemented in reputable companies now, where we test the product before the government says we can put it on the shelf. The promise versus reality. Let's talk about first about the promise. 4 key factors. Number 1, bioavailability. When you put that pill from the shelf and you take it in, does it get into the system? The dosage. Heavy dosage doesn't mean it's guaranteed to cure. Most medical physicians, if you're a menopausal woman, they tell you to take 1,500 milligrams of calcium a day. If you took it in one dose, you're not going to absorb all of that. So more is not better. Even in vitamin C, Dr. Linus Pauling, who won 2 Nobel Peace Prizes, he said that vitamin C can cure many things and prevent the duration and the severity of colds. I take a lot of vitamin C, but if people take too much vitamin C, even as an infant or as an adult, you can have diarrhea of taking too much vitamin C. You can become dehydrated. You can even cause death among kids if you dehydrate quickly and taking too much vitamin C. But you don't have to take quite a lot. It doesn't happen too often. Then the formulation. The formulation is the term I use, synergistic. When you see people taking 4 or 5 different pills, I don't like that because women and men hate to take many things. But if you want to have bone health, you can put calcium, magnesium, vitamin D, boron, with enzymes, 1 pill. So formulation is very key. And last but not least, individual biochemistry. One thing I learned when I went to do my internship, and one of my colleagues, a medical doctor, when people came in with a certain ailment, they gave the same thing, the same prescription. When you go to a naturopathic doctor, everybody is not the same. Your diet is not the same. Your genetics is not the same. So we may do acupuncture. We may do massage. We may implement a dietary change, biofeedback, or do counseling. So every patient in a naturopathic office is treated as an individual. A man is different from a woman. We don't get the same drug, like a pharmaceutical drug for certain ailments. We look at the causes, try to eliminate it, but we will implement certain things naturally. Next slide. What's always in the pill, we talk about high potency, is not always the best thing. Because when you look at the full spectrum, as I call it, from the time you ingest something into your body, we have to go through all this, what we call the small intestine, large intestine, we have the stomach. We have to go through all the steps, and certain things may be destroyed before they reach the end line where it needs to be absorbed. So when you take a product, are you sure it's going to the target tissue? So if I'm taking a product, maybe somebody's taking something to help with the eyes. And with the eyes, a lot of people suffer from age-related macular degeneration as we get older. But people who are taking something called beta-carotene or retinol, is it really targeted as an antioxidant to go to the eyes? Not necessarily in all cases. There are many different types of antioxidants. One of the most important things you'll find in the world today is a lot of cases of senility. Where did I put my keys? Where did I park my car? Alzheimer's. A lot of problems with dementia. We have a lot of that. Every time we smoke, every time we drink alcohol, it destroys the brain cells. When we eat fast foods, when we don't exercise, it destroys these cells. And we have a lot of people taking something called ginkgo biloba. Ginkgo biloba does not increase your memory. It doesn't reverse it. But ginkgo biloba has an active ingredient called flavonoids that increases blood circulation. If I can have more blood circulation to the brain, people recall and remember. But there's certain people says, take this ginkgo biloba, it's going to make you remember, it's going to reverse. Not true. Vitamin E is an antioxidant. That also, when you take it, can target certain places, the circulation. So somebody with cardiovascular problems, hypertension, taking vitamin E can help lower the blood pressure because it's targeted. You take it, goes to the circulatory system. The next slide is a lot of challenges that we find. Solubility. What's the difference between fat soluble and water soluble? So very quickly, except for the nutritionists, the dietitian and the audience back there, we have something very simple that you can recall. There's fat soluble vitamins and water soluble vitamins. Fat soluble stays in the body longer. Vitamin A, vitamin T, vitamin E, and vitamin K. If you take excessive amount, it can damage the body and lead to side effects. But the other one, called water soluble, you take it in, it's depleted right away. B complex, any type of stress you have, and all of us have stress, B complex would be very good as a helpful thing to handle stress. As well as vitamin C, which is water soluble. So when these things are taken into the gut area, you find even this herb called, when I was a young boy, I grew up in Trinidad. My mom used to make foods like curry gold, curry shrimp. We didn't know that curry came from Mother Earth that God created, something called turmeric. The spice is called, in medical studies, when people begin to study and do scientific research with nutraceuticals, we found something called curcumin. Can anybody tell me when you take curcumin, how much of that is absorbed in the body? Is it less than 5 or more than 5? It is less than 5%. So when you go to the store and you buy from the shelf, from the pharmacy, the grocery, or the health food store, and you're taking curcumin for blood circulation, for joint pain, for arthritis, whatever claim that they're making, less than 2% of that curcumin is absorbed in the body. So you're wasting your money. But I will talk about a doctor from China who found a way with enzyme technology. I will take a break and then I'll come back later and talk to you about Dr. Joe, about this product. So this thing about curcumin, you have to know what type. Then on the next slide, there's something called dosages. If you take too little bit, it doesn't do anything. If you take too much, it can lead to toxicity. And listen to this story very carefully. When I was studying when I did my PhD in nutrition, many people told me that if you took too much vitamin A, you will get problems eventually that will lead to a disease called jaundice. I don't know how many men and women here have children, but even because of the problems of a baby, the baby has to be put in an incubator to help. That's different. Did you know that people told me, Elvis, you're crazy. You're giving your children 30,000 international units of beta carotene a day, 10,000, I should say, vitamin A a day, because on that screen you see 3 carrots. If you took heavy doses of this, 1 carrot contains how much vitamin A? A medium to a large size carrot. How much does a medium sized carrot contain of vitamin A? 10,000. Did you know in Canada, we are not allowed to put in a pill, in one pill, vitamin A 10,000? It is illegal to sell vitamin A 10,000 because they said if you have too much vitamin A, it can cause jaundice. Very simple. You don't have to be a naturopath or a medical doctor to diagnose if you have jaundice. Look at the sclera of the eye or the palms of the hand. It'll turn what color? Yellow. My children, when they were young babies, after 6 months, when they got to a year, I would juice carrot juice for my children. See those 3 carrots there? That's 30,000 international units of vitamin A. My kids are still alive today. So you have to be very careful when people say, don't take too much. When I was studying as a naturopathic doctor, we were told to not give more than 400 international units of vitamin D. Because if you give too much, it would harm the organs, the kidneys and the liver and the stomach. Today, there are drops that baby can take, not 400, not 500, not 600, not 7, not 8, 9. There are babies now taking 1,000 international units of vitamin A, and you see people are taking, vitamin D, 1,000. People with multiple sclerosis are taking 10,000 international units of vitamin D for short term, not long term. I would have to take a lot of carrots, over 1 million international units for 6 months, till I have problems. We cannot put that amount in one pill. So you have to be cognizant of the dosage and the duration. And this is why we complement with dietitians at the Healing Center, that we can educate people. Vitamin toxicity can occur if sustained for over 30,000 for a long time, 8 months. You're not going to be taking that for that long. So I wanted to pinpoint dosage is very important. Next slide on formulation, you will see formulation is very key. In all my years, over 4 decades in medical practice and educating people, I never saw one cause of a disease. Disease is caused by many things, it's not just one. So when you look at this, how do we absorb products to be working very efficiently? Chelation. In the pharmaceutical industry, we use things like amino acids to circulate and get that pill better absorbed. We have liposomal, where we have fat, we are surrounded by a phospholipid to absorb. I will talk after our break. I will give you some time to check around the vendors, but I will talk about something called enzyme technology from Dr. Joe. Dr. Joe used something called the acronym talks about enzyme activate catalyze technology. This you have to stay and listen to about this after the break to show you how this technology works to help individuals to absorb. When you look at the next slide, this growing up in Trinidad, we didn't have a lot of bone problem, bone pathology, because if you go into the sun, 20 minutes, our body is able in 20 minutes to get the sun, affect the melanin and the skin, and the melanin then has to go through the liver, convert that, and then through the kidneys, and we have vitamin D. That's why we call it the sunshine vitamin. In people taking vitamin D, I said, why did my vitamin D work or not work? You have to understand when you take vitamin D, all the factors and the kidneys and the liver have to be working optimally for you to convert it. I suffer from a condition, not a disease, like Michael Jackson. If you come closer to me, my melanin I inherited from my parents is called vitiligo. I can go in the sun as long as I want, but my body will not convert and make the melanin. All of us have some kind of hereditary disposition. I also look at people who are overexposing themselves and you're taking vitamin D as a supplement. Did you know that you can get skin cancer if you stay too long in the sun without sunscreen or protection? Yes, you can. So even natural vitamin D is harmful. So dosages could be 1,000, 5,000, 10,000, that'll be fine. But it depends on your genetics. That's the key. When you look at, did you get all the vitamin D that you need? So this is why we can test, and we now have clinicals tested that you can test your vitamin D level now. And then we tell most men and most women, as they get into their fourth, fifth decade, check how much calcium you have, check how much vitamin D that you have. So for all of you who don't have the studies of me, studying about 10 years in school, you're going to be very smart. On the next slide, you will see, test, don't guess. Dr. Singleton talked about there's certain testing that he does. There's lab tests, there's x-rays, there's blood tests, urine tests. But also look beyond the label. Look beyond, what is the format? You have magnesium citrate, magnesium caltrate, magnesium glycinate. There's all these different formats. But when taken correctly, I would like you to also remember, when you take your supplements, take it with your food. Because all and each and every one of us here are deficient in enzymes. Every one of us were deficient in enzymes. The next slide. Synergy, I like that word, synergistic. Like I said, there's never one disease that's caused by one thing. It's a multitude of many things. So when you look at whole foods, when we were younger, you would look at an orange, and that orange would have about maybe 80 to 100 milligrams of vitamin C. Now that same orange has to go through transportation from Florida. In bypasses they have to be stored on the truck. By the time every fruit and vegetable reach your tabletop, it's been sprayed 16 to 18 times with chemicals. So I'll repeat that if you didn't get that. By the time we pick something from Mother Nature, and it has to be transported, and we don't want it to get rotten by the time it comes to Canada, be it from wherever in the world, it's been sprayed 16 to 18 times. And guess what one of the causes of cancer is? Chemicals, dyes. We inject things to make it look yellow. We inject our beef red dye. So I'm not saying stop eating these foods, but just be cognizant that when it comes to your tabletop, look at the effects. The medical approach, they have what's called a reductionist. They look at the orange and they extrapolate something called vitamin C, one thing. When I eat an orange or even a tangerine, I eat everything because it's got fiber, it's got water, it's got vitamin C, it's got a lot of trace minerals in it. That is the whole food. We're trying to get people to eat the whole food. So taking supplements, we call it that because it supplements your diet. So the dosage, the cost effective, the studies, especially with vitamin C, we know vitamin C works. Because a lot of people tell me, how do you know vitamins work? You just think you feel good. I'll give you a story that you won't forget. Christopher Columbus, hired by the Queen, was told to travel to discover the world. Every time the sailors went on sea and they traveled, when they came back, guess what? They had bleeding gums. Their teeth was not stable, they were falling out. On one trip, they happened to put a barrel of oranges and also lime. So when people went on the trip on the excursion and the sailors came back, guess what? They had no bleeding gums. They had no problems with denture, with teeth falling out. Guess what? They found that lime and the oranges had something in it. Vitamin C. Did you all know that Dr. Linus Pauling, I mentioned earlier, showed how vitamin C can not only affect the immune system, but prevent bleeding of the gums if you have the right dosage, vitamin C. So when I look back and I heard that story, I finally found out why they called the British people limeys, because of the limes they were eating on that. And that is a true fact that vitamin C, they studied that can prevent a disease that we know today. It's called scurvy, just by taking vitamin C. Bleeding gums, easy to bruise. The next slide is what I call the food matrix. Foods have all these fancy buzzwords. All the science and research is done. Antioxidant, polyphenols, and thousands of phytonutrients working synergistically. So a musician can play an instrument, but you need, somebody to orchestrate. You need all the people in symphony. So I believe in eating apples, pear, peach, plums, oranges, always. I believe in a lot of the vegetables, the green leafy vegetables. Eat everything together. And the entourage effect is the best effect. You can train, and I know this in the football country here, you just don't need a quarterback. You need a lineman. You need the wide receivers to go and throw the ball. A quarterback cannot do it on his own. You need a team, just like your food. You need to eat a multitude of different things, not just one thing. Maybe if somebody came in with severe osteoporosis or osteopenia, severe arthritis, absolutely without shadow of a doubt, working with the doctor, I'll give a dosage of 1,500 milligrams to take it 2 times a day, not at once. After that, they can go back to 500 milligrams. So when you look at the broad spectrum of all these things, it's important to know, because if you take too much copper in your diet, that could cause the zinc level. So you have to have the balance of copper and zinc, especially with iron. Bioavailability on the next slide. I will leave that to talk a little bit about after our break about the bioavailability using with enzymes. You can take all the most expensive stuff, but if it's not bioavailable, you just pass it out through the washroom. Very important to understand. There's also case studies to show you can take a lot of calcium, but when people and young women and young men or seniors were taking calcium, they were not absorbing it. They were depositing it in the joints. It was causing something called calcification. So you got to know that when you take calcium, you could just take something like vitamin D and calcium with vitamin K2, and it delivers it where it has to go. So it's very important if you're taking supplements to use a synergistic effect. Know what you're taking and what absorbs and what antagonizes it. Even the problem, we have something on the next slide, you'll see curcumin, which is a natural herb extracted from nature, the bioavailability. Studies show that curcumin on its own, less than 2% is absorbed. But if it's combined with digestive enzymes, which I'll talk about after the break, but also with piperine, 2,000% better absorbed by taking it with black pepper. Synergistically working together. I talked a little bit about earlier, so on the next slide, I just wanted to bring your attention to there are a lot of misleading labels and claims in today's market. And this is why people before COVID did not know a lot about vitamin D. I have a slide I'll talk about that. But when people take too much vitamin D and calcium, that is excessive intake that can cause problems. If you're taking a drug, there is drug and herb interaction. If you go to a naturopathic doctor, we can do the same thing in the early stages that we talk about when you want to thin the blood. Most people are told by medical doctors, including my father. My father was told to take an aspirin because high blood pressure, and he began to take aspirin, and my father had a bleeding ulcer where he was vomiting blood. My sister and I was there. We were able to call the ambulance and get him to the hospital because aspirin, if you take too much of it, it can cause bleeding ulcers, and I had proof of my father, one of those people. There was over 14,000 plus people admitted to the hospital from overuse of aspirin in the wrong way and taking too much, of which about 5,000 to 7,000 died in Ontario. But people did not know garlic has anti-platelet aggregation factors, can thin the blood. People did not know that omega-3 fatty acids can also thin the blood. People did not know that vitamin E has the same effect on circulation. So in my practice, I told people, if your mom or your dad has hypertension, why not let's look at your diet, making sure that you have all the right foods, but supplement with garlic, with omega-3 fatty acid, because it has anti-platelet aggregation factors. But if it's too far gone, definitely Dr. Singleton and the doctors, they can give you something to help you to thin the blood, but you can wean off it, working with us, the dietitian myself, in taking the right dosage of the amount. So I will let you know, there is a lot of research now on the effects of herbs, vitamins, and nutraceuticals in today's market. Even ginseng. Ginseng is very bad. There's a lot of men who come to me and they're taking ginseng for erectile dysfunction. They have low libido, impotency, and they heard that ginseng is good. But ginseng can also raise high blood pressure. There is what we call the yin ginseng, that's the white ginseng, and there's also the yang ginseng, that's the hot, that increases circulation. So you got to know which type of ginseng. There's many different types of ginsengs out there. There's Korean ginseng, there's Siberian ginseng, there's American ginseng. So this is when people need to be educated, especially with men who have, and women after menopause with the low sex drive. Not all ginseng are the same. The active ingredient studies is called ginsenoside. A lot of research on ginseng. A lot of history going on for thousands of years. There's also on the next slide, you'll see the trust gap. People are very skeptic when it comes to certain supplements. Even doctors, I say, be very careful, because when you look at the weight loss and sexual enhancement products, people are putting in, besides the natural stuff, they're putting in things that people do not know. Especially I talk about amphetamines and certain pharmaceutical drugs. So there's inconsistency with quality, one batch to another batch, one company to another company. This I wanted you to be aware of. You have to ask questions. You have to figure out what you're doing. This is why the shade I talked about earlier, that they licensed millions of products, but then the FDA came in and they now are protecting the public. It's never too late. But now, even in Canada, they're protecting the public. What's on that label must be inside the bottle. So we have what we call, on the next slide, you will see third party, and after the next slide, you'll see what we call third party. So we don't do the testing in their labs and clinics that I work at. We send them out because quality is very important. And I repeat, if a vitamin is put on the shelf and does harm, and it doesn't profess what's in the bottle there that's on the label, the president goes to jail and they'll be fined $10 million in Canada. They're very strict on natural supplements because 77% I heard are people in America taking supplements today. So it's called buyer beware. At this point, I would like people to get up, visit the booth, and maybe 5 minutes or 10 minutes, I don't know,